Hi everybody, Eric Brown, MOBO-Media. Hey, I want to talk about something pretty serious today. That's really near and dear to my heart. As I mentioned on some videos or some things I put out, I have a background in behavioral health and psychology and psychopharmacology and social work, psychiatry, and so I've done a little bit of all of it. I've worked with licensed folks for a number of years. I've studied it for a number of years. I'm degreed in it. Um, so, the things that I'm conveying to you are not just assumption or not just things that I think. I'm telling you that they're things that have been proven through research and proven through, just an understanding of what it is. And that's PTSD. It's PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder. A lot of times, unfortunately, there's still a stigma associated with mental health. And that, who knows how long it'll take for that stigma to go away, but people still look at mental health as almost a negative thing. I look at it as a positive thing. It's no different than you going to the doctor getting a flu shot. It's no different than you're twisting your ankle and you having to go and get it wrapped up and staying off of it. The same thing with the brain, man. It's a part of your human body, and when it's not doing so well, you need to take the steps to try to improve it and get right. But with PTSD, what I want to talk about, a lot of myths associated with PTSD, a lot of the false stuff, a lot of the crazy stuff that people make up. First of all, a lot of times when people hear PTSD, the first thing they think is crazy, particularly when it comes to veterans. And it's not something it sits well with me because I know what PTSD is, post-traumatic stress disorder. It's nothing more than the body's normal reaction to an abnormal situation. Let me repeat that again. PTSD is nothing more than the body's normal reaction to an abnormal situation. You can get PTSD in a car wreck. Car wrecks are not normal, but how your body responds to it is normal. Your body is supposed to respond because that's not normal. You can see a person getting shot, getting killed, and that could cause PTSD. It doesn't mean you're crazy. It just means your body responded in a way to something that's not normal. It's not normal for people to get shot and killed, and so a lot of myths associated with PTSD. Um, Unfortunately, as a veteran myself, I've encountered a lot of veterans suffer from PTSD, and folks dealing with those veterans and treating them in ways they shouldn't be treating them. Really just treating them like they're crazy or something like that, some combat crazy dude or whatever, wartime crazy. That's not what PTSD is. And I will tell you this: I have PTSD. I'm diagnosed PTSD, and I'm not ashamed of it. I'm at a point in my life to where I don't care what anybody thinks about me. I've had a long, successful run, and I'm gonna keep on running, keep on putting my foot in front, one foot in front of the other. But with that comes some sacrifice. It comes some sacrifice, and some of that sacrifice involved, me being afflicted with PTSD with some of the things I've saw, with some of the things I've been involved with. I've been in volcanic eruptions. I've been a survivor of a volcanic eruption. I've been a survivor of massive earthquakes, typhoons, combat, being shot at, um, PTSD from seeing someone shot, from seeing bodies. Um, I was in Somalia. I remember being in Somalia. I never forget. I don't know, we had to go somewhere in Somalia. Somalia is in Africa, it's East Africa, and it is I don't want to call it a hellhole. That's not respectful for the people of Somalia. But what other folks did to Somalia is disgusting and caused it to be a hellhole. But I never forget being in Somalia when we went over there. We're driving, and when we're driving like that, you're geared up, you're armed up because you don't know. I mean, you're ready to go. And I never forget pointing up. I had to point a rifle at a lady that was coming up close to us, and we were told to, don't engage until they engage us. And so by the grace of God, I didn't have to engage, but during that time, I did see bodies, man. I see bodies laying on sidewalks dead. Hell, I seen big cows laying in the road with swerve around, dead. And it became the norm over there, which is not normal. Something like that should become the norm. When it becomes the norm for you to see something like that, that's when red flags should go up because um, if it becomes a norm, oftentimes you're suppressing it. You're suppressing what you're saying and your reaction to it, your feelings behind it. But there are so many myths to PTSD. PTSD, you can get PTSD from a car wreck, you can get PTSD from a fall. I had a very traumatic fall on February 22nd. February 22nd. And I'm telling you this personal story because I want you to understand what PTSD is. So I was in the backyard and I had mobility issues with my right leg, whatever, and it gave out. Man, I had a fall. I've never fell so hard in my life. And when I fell, literally when I fell, my body twisted like this. So it twisted my spine. Um, and days after that, man, I was messed up in the head because I couldn't believe I felt like that, you know. And even now, I think about it. I think about the pain I experienced, and that could be considered PTSD. You know, it's not a normal fall like that. But they said I had a traumatic fall. It wasn't a normal fall. A traumatic fall. When they put traumatic on the front of it, that means that there was a lot of damage done. And docs even told me that I'm lucky because I could have been paralyzed by the fall. And they showed me on the X-rays with a disc in my neck, protruding and poking against my spinal cord and all this type of stuff. And, but by the grace of God, God was watching over me. I was okay when I got up from the fall. I think the adrenaline was rushing. I think I was more embarrassed than anything, looking around to see if anybody saw me falling. And I never forget, I told my mother about it a couple hours later on the phone. And she said, are you hurting anything right now? I said, no. She said, wait till in the morning. Man, I'm going to tell you, the next day, it went downhill. It got to where I couldn't even hardly walk. Literally, I couldn't hardly walk. And I had to get an immediate steroid injection into my spine because it was just that bad. I felt so hard it shifted my spine. It actually shifted my spine. It's just some of the most horrific pain. And so, again, even that is like called PTSD because that fall is something I'll always remember because I don't ever want to repeat it again. But you can get PTSD from, within our communities. I'll never forget there was on Miller Avenue, Miller Street in Fort Worth. I can't remember where I was, Japan or Philippines, I think. But I'd always try to keep tabs on things in Fort Worth and what was going on in the streets because, I don't want to say I came from the streets, but I was out there and I just stayed out of the way. I didn't get too deep into it. But long story short, I started seeing this news article and I got word that this guy had killed 3 guys around the corner from my grandmother. An interesting thing, my brother-in-law actually witnessed it. He witnessed it. And to this day, he can repeat like verbatim what happened during that situation. One guy, I guess 3 guys were getting ready to handle one guy, and he killed all 3 of them. All 3, I think all 3 had shots to the head, man. And my brother-in-law saw one guy get shot and crawl on the ground, crawling until he just died. You know what I'm saying? The reason I mention that is because the individual that killed those folks, they used defense that that was based on PTSD and in impoverished neighborhoods with high crime rates. And to be honest with you, I kind of thought that it made sense. I mean, people within our communities have PTSD. A lot of them don't know it. I mean, we've been through some things in our community. I don't say that to put our community down. I say that to be truthful. We've been through some things in our communities, and a lot of times it wasn't our fault. We talk about the old crack genocide, not epidemic, genocide, because it was intentional. And a lot of folks got PTSD from that stuff, how families were torn apart. The gang violence, a lot of folks have PTSD at very young ages, man, very young ages. And it's sad because a lot of these folks are not aware that PTSD they suffered at a young age, it would oftentimes it follows them throughout their lives, man. And you get the nightmares, the sleepless nights, and things like that, man. So I was diagnosed with moderate to severe PTSD years ago. Probably, if I had to guess, probably 2015, 14, something like that. Something like that, maybe a little earlier. And I never forget, the VA, the Veterans Administration, sent me to a counselor because the reason they sent me to the counselor because I was filing a claim for issues I was having, and I had to go and sit in front of a counselor. I'll never forget, it was a social worker. I had to drive from my home probably for an hour to meet with her. This lady was the most, man, she was She was a wonderful woman. She was really a wonderful woman. She was a real deal. She sat there and listened to some of the things I had been through. She listened to where I was in my life at the time. I never forget. She told me. She said, Eric. She said, you probably shouldn't even be working right now. I mean, she basically told me that you need to consider stop working because what you've gone through is not normal. It's not normal, and it's not going to go anywhere unless you begin to address it and heal from it. But PTSD is real. It's real, and I'm not ashamed of it. It's um it's just my body reacting to something that was not normal. So, but there are a lot of myths with PTSD. For a long time, I wouldn't even tell people I had PTSD, but now I don't care. Yes, I have PTSD, and I didn't give it to myself. It was all because of military service. It was all because of things, I've seen in my personal life, whether it be on the streets or um, within the communities. I've seen stabbings. I've seen shootings. You name it. I'm not trying to say, that what I saw was any more horrific than anyone else, but I'm trying to tell you it impacted me. It definitely impacted me. So there are myths associated with PTSD. Don't be ashamed to accept the fact that you got some things that are not in sync. They're not in sync, meaning your brain is having a tough time of processing something that you saw that was either traumatic, destructive, or deadly. And PTSD can come in many forms. It can come from many places. And the one thing I want people to understand is PTSD is not one thing. It's not one thing. That's why a lot of times I always try to educate people, teach them about PTSD and the myths associated with it, and let them know it doesn't mean you're crazy. So stop doing it. Stop saying that. PTSD just meant a person went through something that wasn't normal, and they're having a tough time processing it and coping with it. So oftentimes they need a little bit of help to try to make sense of it. And so, yeah, a lot of myths associated with PTSD. Um, I suspect there's even more PTSD in my own family, just from things I know that occurred in my family. But it's not called PTSD. It's called, in our community, getting over it and moving on. But sometimes it's just not that simple. It's not that simple. It looks like that on the outside that you're getting over it and moving on. But internally, you know, you become silent about the dreams you're having and the nightmares and things like that about the stuff you've seen or the stuff that you've witnessed, or you may have been a victim of some crime or anything like that, and that PTSD has had a horrible effect on you. So please, 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 anyone out there with this really backwards understanding of PTSD, just please stop it. Go look in the dictionary and go Google it. See what PTSD really is. PTSD really is. And if you think you have PTSD, certainly seek help. But one thing I would encourage you not to do is never self-diagnose yourself with PTSD, because sometimes PTSD, um, sometimes it's something else, but it looks like PTSD. It could be anxiety, but it looks like PTSD. It could be a person having, you know, kind of personality issues or what have you. And to some, it may look like, oh, this is just a knucklehead, or just mean person, but not knowing this person suffered from PTSD and they've never actually sought help for it or tried to, rationalize with it and understand that it something happened. Something happened that was not normal. Hey, I'm not gonna hold y'all with this. I'll talk more about this in other videos, but I just wanted to do a real quick video on PTSD and what it means, what it is, and what it is not. It is it's not a death sentence. PTSD is not. You can overcome PTSD. PTSD is just from my own training. It's not one thing. PTSD is anxiety, it's depression, it's you know OCD. It's PTSD can be outbursts. It can be someone who really doesn't want to even be around other folks, because they can't deal with other people. PTSD can even be it can look like someone who, and I've had this. I've had folks that they'll try to cope with PTSD by making it look like something else. And so you see this person and they look like nothing's wrong with them, but they're overdoing it. They're overdoing it, almost like they're the perfect person. But then you can begin to talk to them and say, man, what have you gone through? Or man, what have you gone through? Then you realize this person might be afflicted with PTSD or one of the other ailments. I'm not saying everything is PTSD, but it could be anxiety. It could be just a stressor. It could be a traumatic event. It could be a whole bunch of things. But PTSD is not one thing. But one thing it is nasty. It's nasty because to be afflicted with it is not a good feeling. It's not a good feeling for some. There are different levels of PTSD. You got everything from mild PTSD to severe PTSD. And like I said, mine is moderate to severe. And the reason it's moderate to severe is because of what I've gone through. Not necessarily how I carry myself or anything like that. It's what I've gone through and my response to it. And clinicians are very well trained to pull that out and do the right thing and not only diagnose you with it, make sure you get the proper care for it. So stop the myths, the negative myths about PTSD. It's not a bad thing. It's just the body's normal reaction to an abnormal situation. Again, this is Eric Brown with MOBO-Media. Y'all take care. Goodbye.